Okay, thanks for that, everyone. We're going to hand over to our speakers now, and first up is Amanda.
Thank you. Hello. Oh, it's working. Woo! First of all, I'd like to say a really big thank you to the programming committee for asking me to come and open the convention. And I'd like all of us to give LCNA committee a huge round of applause for all the work. Because it's a hell of a job putting on this convention, and and it always comes together on the day. I always think that's amazing. Like, it's a mad group of insane addicts that work tirelessly for a year, and it's just like the theory of chaos. You think it's never going to happen, or it's going to be, and then on the day, everything miraculously works, doesn't it? That's my experience of LCNA. But these lot might not be as mad as when I did it. Yeah. So they might be very well organised. That could be anyway. So, and thank you really as well for such a lovely topic. The topic of this meeting is We Do Recover. And I just think that is, for me, that statement, the reading, the green reading, the We Do Recover reading is my favourite reading, because it puts in the entirety of what we do. And it says, doesn't it? There's a bit where it says, in man's entire history, it's like this is it now. And, and I sort of feel like that. I do in this moment. And when we were having the moment of silence for John, all I could hear was my heartbeat in my ear going, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And I convinced myself there'd only be, because Friday nights are notoriously quite quiet here. So I was like, it's all right, it'll be 100 people, 50 people, 100 people will be all right. And actually, there's a lot more of you. So, but it'll be fine. I have faith today. I've just got to get myself out the way and let my higher power do the job. So, I've been in the fellowship a while, and my story is very much like the We Do Recover reading, and it says, doesn't it, at the end of the road, we can't face living with or without drugs. And that was my, I came to this fellowship absolutely broken, but before the brokenness came lots of madness where I thought drugs are great and everybody should take drugs. I started using it about the age of 13, and my mum always said to me, she said, you can drink, you can smoke cigarettes, but don't take drugs. And of course, that's the worst thing you can say to a rebellious adolescent at 13 who's just like, yes, come on. And so I made a beeline to find people that took drugs, and I made sure that I got into the deep subversive layers of, and I was brought up down in southern England, and it was a very, I lived right by the sea, and in the village, I'm always a bit embarrassed of this. My first love always shames me, because he always says to me, what do you write when you write in the area recognition? Do you write Bracklesham Bay? And I was like, no, I write London. And he was like, but you come from Bracklesham Bay, which is this really tiny seaside town where you'd get like tumbleweeds going through the middle of the village. It would be so villagey. But and I hated it growing up there. I felt like I was this young, crazy, wild person, and I was in this little village and there was nothing. But I made a caused a good deal of trouble, like a true addict does growing up, and just thought, drugs. I thought actually before I came to this fellowship that I got into drugs for fun, but what I've realised by doing the work, actually there was a lot of, it wasn't about fun. There was, from a really early age, I had that thing where I just didn't like myself. Even from when I can remember, sort of 7, 8 years old, if I saw a picture of myself, I would just rip it up. I couldn't handle even seeing a picture of myself. And I really had that real, I'd look in the mirror and just didn't like what I saw. just incredible levels of self-loathing from a very, very early age. And so when drugs came along, you know, it was escaping from me. And I'm, you know, and I look back on those early days. Acid was my first drug of choice, and I thought everybody should take acid. I thought it should be pumped into the water so that everyone could experience a powerful hallucinogenic experience. And we used to go, I was a hippie, and we used to go to these festivals, and we'd all lie to our mums and say, oh, I'm staying at so-and-so's, and so-and-so would say, she's staying at mine. And then we'd go off in a little van, you know, and we went to this festival, Westbury, which was 1985, I think. It was when Stonehenge, the first year they'd stopped Stonehenge. And we got there, and we said, right, let's find some acid. And we found this guy with this liquid acid. And he was like, yeah, man, I'll just dip it in it. Yeah, right, you just do it. And we were like, yeah. We were like 14, you know what I mean? Trying to look cool, like we knew what we were doing. And my friends took these 2 trips each that were literally just dipped in this liquid acid. And I had to phone my mum. I had to phone my mum and tell her that I was at Chrissy's and it was all right and we were staying the night and, you know, lie. So I thought, I won't do mine yet. I'll wait. Very sensible. And by the time we did no mobiles at that stage, so we had to leave the hippie site, which was quite a palaver because there were lots of police roadblocks and things. And they came up on this acid, right? And they were sitting in the back of this van and their eyes were rolling. They were like, they couldn't even talk. Their heads were... And I was like, oh, my God. I mean, we'd done a bit of acid, but this was like looking at people going all mutant and alien, you know. It was like, oh, my God. And I thought, I better not do 2. I'll just do 1. That's, you know, I'll just do 1. And I went and phoned my mum and I just did 1. And I tell you what, this LSD was so strong. It was like going through a complete nuclear holocaust. I think it lasted for about 36 hours. My best friend fell asleep she went to sleep in the fire and burnt all her ear. My other best friend had a stutter for 6 months afterwards. We went back to school the next week and she, you know, it had completely... My other friend, we got past a Chillum, right? And she was so out of it, she thought it was an ice cream cone. She was like trying to eat this Chillum. And I was like, do you know what I mean? I just remember thinking, I think Hawkwind were playing or something. I couldn't even stand up. You know, I remember having this caftan thing on and just feeling like this swamp monster with Mars bar wrapper everywhere, just thinking, oh, and it just went on and on and on, and it was absolutely horrendous. You know, it wasn't enjoyable, and then when I came down, I just thought that was great. Got to do some more. Got to do some more. Get some more of that down me, you know. And, you know, and for 6 months after, with my best friend at school when she was stuttering, I just thought we were the crew, do you know what I mean? Stutter, burnt ear, so what? Look at us go, you know? And it went on like that for me. You know, I had a love affair with every drug I took. After the acid, then I had a period of, you know, like Dexies and Black Bombers and all those pharmaceutical speeds and just do loads of them, be awake for days and just be like, yeah, you know, and then come down and be absolutely done in and really depressed and couldn't talk to anybody and just think, take some more, it'll be fine. You know, and I had this ferocious appetite for drugs. For a little girl, I was quite an animal. If people owed money to people, they'd be like, send Mandy round, she'll get it. You know, because I was just this leery, mouthy, you know, I'm like that naturally. Anyone that knows me, my women from my local home group here, you know, I'm very, very manic, loud, leery person. If you add drugs to my personality, I am like a sort of helicopter person, this sort of lunatic that doesn't go away. And lots of friends of mine told me that. When I got clean, they were just like, we hated you. You were just an absolute nightmare. You know, I'd sell drugs to people and then go, use all my drugs and go, come on, you've got to give them back to me now. Come on, I need them back. Do you know what I mean? It was just... And what went on after the acid was the E generation. And that was when it was like, this is it. I have come home. You know, I had a boyfriend that had a big sound system. So we had a big Tane... I used to say it was my rig, but it wasn't my rig. It was my boyfriend's rig. And we would go and get in these trucks and we'd be like, right, let's go. And we'd leave our hippie site And we'd go and we'd find a field, and we'd get on the phone, and an hour later we'd have like 2,000 people, and I loved it. I thought, this is it, you know, and we'd do loads of ketamine and stand on haystacks and think, yes, I'm a sugar puff and I'm all right, and, you know, just really mad, surreal. I remember doing this party down in Little Farringdon, down in Wiltshire, and the farmer came to us because we'd organised one, and he said, don't set light to my fields. And I said, we won't set light to your cornfields, I promise. And of course it was a stupid thing to say, really, because I think they were all smoking in the bloody cornfields, and within an hour, you know, the cornfields were burning, and you had the MC, I think it was Easy Groove at the time, going, come away from the fire, you know, come into the party away from the fire. But I loved it. I thought, you know, and it was this whole unity thing, this whole movement of people that were out being crazy, and we were dancing, and it was house music, and it was hedonistic, and I just thought, this is it, you know. And I remember my first love coming to me and just saying, Amanda, you know what, you've really got a problem. And I just laughed and thought, look at me, you know, I'm just living it. I've got this great life, you know, and I do put these parties, and it's just fantastic. Why would I want to stop using? And I was about 21, 22 then, you know, and it really hadn't got bad enough. The progression was there, but I just thought, you know, anybody that didn't take drugs. I remember I went off. I used to do a lot of dancing at parties and stuff. I was just a lunatic. I didn't really, you know, we'd go into these changing rooms and there'd be all these professional dancers doing all their warm-ups, and we would just be like, get the lines out and go, and that would be our warm-up, you know, and all these professionals would be stretching their legs, and we'd be like, nah, none of that, you know, 4 E's, half a gram of Charlie and get out there, you know. And actually we used to get booked for a lot more jobs than all the professionals, because we were just crazy people. We'd be like, you know, and I just thought, this is great. So I had 10 years of loving it, and thinking, you know, how could this be wrong, you know, and judging people that didn't do drugs. You know, I remember sharing a dressing room with quite a famous, with Moby in America, and he said, I don't take drugs. And I just thought, you weirdo, there's got to be something wrong with you if you don't take drugs. Do you know what I mean? So that whole concept to me of what we do here was completely alien. I didn't think, you know, why would I want to do that? You know, drugs equated to fun, and it took me quite a few years to realise where the scene got a lot darker, the parties disappeared, and I started to use more of the Class A drugs than the nasty, selfish drugs that bring us to our knees. And, you know, I would say, really, although I was addicted to heroin, you know, crack was the drug that really profoundly changed who I was as a person, in terms of that laughter and you know, all the nice things that you see about me, my personality. I'm quite fun-loving, I'm quite generous, I'm quite warm. All of that was obliterated with crack cocaine. And you know, my moral code, when I did everything I said I'd never do for money. And I'd quite often be seen running up Oxford Street with an Afro-Caribbean wig on, back to front, with my shoplifting bags, orange makeup, blood generally up my sleeves, thinking I look really undercover. Do you know what I mean? And no stawdy is even going to see that I'm on top, you know. And I used to really think, you know, people would stare at me at the tube and I'd think, he fancies me. 5.5 stone, you know, no arse, couldn't even sit down, I had no arse. You know, and the levels of psychosis for me, you know, I don't know about you guys, but the things I did in psychosis, I mean, I just love to share. You know, I think it's important for the new people. If I came in and heard people talking all spiritual when I got clean, I would just walk out the door. People need to hear about my madness. That's what I feel, yes? Right. So, and what, you know, I used to do that whole thing, I don't know if anyone can identify, where I would build up the barricade. You know, I would first of all do the sheets on all the windows. This was if I was in a house. The sheets on the windows, the gaffer tape on the sheets, and then it would be have a pipe, and then it would be barricade the door. Come on, let's barricade the door, they're out there. You know, the feds or whoever's out there. And then you get everyone on board, all paranoid with you. Yeah, barricade the door, Shh. they're coming. You know, let's barricade the door quietly. It's all right, let's do it quietly. Okay, we're barricading the door. And then come down off that pipe and then go, right, let's unbarricade the door. Well, we need to go out and get more fags for Ash. Yeah. And it was just this, you know. And then I would quite often be seen, I ended up in Brixton at the end of my addiction. I would end up generally in my nightie, right, running round the estate at 3 or 4 in the morning, in my nightie, carrying a big knife, because that's very important when you're on crack and psychotic. And thinking that I was being followed by green hues. Do you know what I mean? Hiding in bushes, and there's dog walkers at about 5, you know, and you're in a bush with a nightie and a big knife. Really, you know, yeah, I've got some strategy around this. I don't know what it is, but, you know, and that was the sort of thing I did, you know. Or I'd spent hours under a sideboard, right? Under a sideboard with everything in my bra, just like that. Frozen for about 5 hours. And you know, it was this sort of crack house den. Well, it was my flat, but actually it wasn't my flat. You know, it was like a fences flat that I'd been given as long as I shoplifted a loads of goods. But it got overrun by all the Brixton crack users, and it was just like this crazy place. So I would just retreat under the sideboard. I thought, I'll let them get on with it. I'll be fine down there. Hours staring at the bottom of the door. You know, and so that was me. You know, my psychosis was just, you know, and the thing that I used to do, I wasn't content with just smoking crack. I had to inject it. You know, being a true addict, it's like, put it in the spoon, come on. And then, and what used to happen for me was, because I'd be awake for days, what would happen? I'd inject this white and I would fit. I would start fitting. And, you know, for those of you who know, that's like, it's really close to having a stroke when you're doing that. And what would happen for me, and this sounds quite surreal, but I still have a real belief, like this was real for me, that what would happen, these things would come in the room. There were always 3 of them. There was 2 white shapes and 1 black one. And they would come and they would settle on my head on the bed and they would stop me fitting. Now, you know, I have that belief that when you're using drugs, it's like there is definitely more to what we have in this room, life, this dimension. And I think, but using those drugs, I was totally mad. But there was something that looked after me. When these things would land on my head, I would literally, the fits would stop. And I would feel that, a bit like having a shiatsu or something, I'd just feel this calming feeling of like, it's all right, and I'd stop vibrating. And, you know, and I really think that, you know, when I got clean, and someone said to me, you know, you've got to believe in a higher power, you've got to find something to believe in. For me, I had to think back through my addiction of all the awful stuff that I'd lived through, you know, all of the occasions I'd had guns held at my head. You know, I was a working girl for the last 6 years, and I'd had guns, I'd had knives, I'd had, you know, got in cars with 2, 3 men, knowing that I was going to end up in a really dodgy situation. But the power of the drugs I'd get in that motor, you know, And what I knew was that, you know, through all of that, I had been looked after. Something had protected me and had kept me breathing through all the crazy things and awful things that had happened to me. And so I really got that. You know, that was how I came here, and I got a belief in a higher power, because I knew, technically, probability, statistically, I shouldn't have been alive, you know. And I look back on the old me. You know, it's funny because I've been clean. I celebrated 15 years on the 1st of January, and that's like, yes, come on. And when I first came to NA, I remember people thinking, I know when I was in treatment, they were like, she'll never get it. You know, I was always, because I couldn't sit down in meetings. We used to smoke when I first came to NA, and I'd just be, you know, I couldn't sit down. I'd smoke loads of fags. I would just drink loads of coffee, drink loads of I think I used to drink 14 cans of Red Bull. If I go to an NA thing, it'd be like, yeah, Red Bull. Just lunatic, you know. And I know for me that, you know, coming from that chaos, coming from the street, there was so much damage. When I first got clean, I wasn't aware there, but I knew, first of all, we used to have to, in treatment, we had to fill in this thing, SIDS, daily important events. And I used to just think, in those first 6 weeks of being in this treatment centre, I was like, I am clean, I'm alive, I'm safe, you know. And I really, for me, it was just like, I started coming to NA and I started to realised, you lot are amazing. You're like colourful, mad, crazy people like me, you know. And it was... And I've got to say, I love that about who we are as people, you know. And I used to come to meetings and my spirit was just alive with the feeling of NA and the spirit of NA. And what I wasn't aware was that, you know, despite coming here, despite being incredibly willing, willing to do everything, if someone had said to me, cut off your right arm to stay clean, I would have said, I'll take off my right arm. You know, I was that desperate. And I applied myself and I did the work. But in actual fact, what happened for me is that I still had all of that stuff, all of my childhood stuff, all of, what had gone on with me as a working girl. You know, I had so much to work through and I didn't have the awareness of how that stuff is like, and that self-loathing, how it's the current underneath your recovery. There's this, you know, I had this part of me that just hated myself still. And I didn't believe that I deserved love. I didn't believe I deserved anything good in my life. And because of that, I had a lot of sabotaging behaviours, you know. And it, you know, I think up to about 5, 6, 7 years clean, really, my behaviour, I'd come to NA. I've never been one to sort of not admit, you know, I have come to meetings and I have shared everything. You know, my first home group was Earl's Court Women's. They were all very posh. They had Volvos. And, you know, they had Volvos. They were very well spoken. They were very rich. And I would go in and go, oh, my name's Mandy and I've lived in a bin shed and banged up in my neck, you know. And I would have this shock thing that... because I just felt so unpart of, and those women loved me, and I became secretary at 10 months, and you know, and I became part of, and I realised they were exactly the same as me, you know, and what's happened was that I think for a lot of years in this fellowship, I wanted to be well, I wanted to have integrity, I wanted to look after myself, I wanted to have self-care, I wanted to like myself, but it took years, you know, this process. Wow, we take drugs and that, you know, addiction moves fast. But to get clean and get well here, for me, has been really slow, you know. And it's been sometimes chipping away at stuff that just never goes away, you know. And it's funny because the last few years, things have got a lot better. But this week, being asked to do this, it was like the disease was all over. You're not enough. Nobody likes you. You know, all of that stuff, which is the core of who I am, the core of me is I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, you know, why would anyone love me, I'm ugly, all of that stuff, you know. And what's happened for me, actually, you know, after a lot of years of really believing those lies, you know, and creating dramas around those lies, I got to the point where I was just like, I cannot keep battering myself. I got to 9 years clean in this fellowship and still hated myself as much as I did the day I walked in. You know, and I knew I had to do some work. And I'd had that thing of every time a relationship ended, I wanted to kill myself. It wasn't like, you know, just a few feelings. I would like not eat, I would not sleep, I'd want to drive into walls, you know, and I knew there was work there to be done around me, relationships. And it was about my family of origin. It was about going back and looking at what happened to me as a child. You know, my dad left, my mum was a drinker, there was a lot of abandonment. So what had happened for me was that I'd grown up with, you know, and the thing is, I was brought up in a nice house with nice clothes, there was food in the fridge, but the emotional neglect had left this scar in me where I just had no connection to myself. And so I'd spent 10 years in this fellowship running from me, not liking me, hating me. And I really get that, like, inside job stuff. You know, that was when I really realised I had to do this work. And I did this work. I did the steps around relationships, and I really started to look at my relationship with myself. And what happened around 10 years clean was it just transformed everything. You know, I became a nicer person. I became happier in myself. I didn't want to keep running. You know, my friends that know me, you know, I am incredibly crazy, busy, lunatic person. You know, I've never really, since I got clean, stopped and actually thought about things. And I think, you know, I remember when I first got clean, people would say, oh, sit with yourself. And it'd be like, oh, whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I had never done that, you know. And what I started to do at 10 Years Clean was reduce that busyness and start to be with me a little bit. And it was transformative, you know. I do not have that critical self-talk, that negative, it's not, you know, it comes up. So, you know, by being asked to do this, it came up. But, you know, today I woke up and I thought, I can do this. I am not going to believe the lie that my addiction tells me, that I am not enough. Because I am. You know what? And the reality is that I'm more than enough. And in fact, I believe we're all given gifts, you know. My higher power, who I choose to call God, you know, I couldn't even say that word. I'd be like, don't say that word when I got clean. We'd do the Serenity Prayer and I'd be like, my toes would curl with that G word. And now I'm just like, you know, if you haven't got a belief in a higher power, you're in trouble, really. You know, I'm not talking about religious, I'm talking about higher power. We need that. Step 2 is one of the most important steps, you know, because the reality is people are going to let you down in this fellowship. If you haven't, and I'm just saying what my experience is. But my higher power has never let me down. Since I've been clean, I've been looked after, I've had all my needs met and more. My dreams, my aspirations for myself are nothing compared to what my higher power can do for me, you know. And I've got to say, you know, there have been areas of my life that I never thought I would heal. I thought I was so damaged, especially relationships. I never believed that I would have a loving, supportive, functional relationship. I just couldn't do it. I had years in this fellowship thinking, I can't do that stuff. I'm a handful. I'm high maintenance, all of those tapes. And actually, I just needed to find the right person. You know, find the right person and be willing to work through that stuff. And I wanted to talk a little bit as well. You know, I spend a lot of my winters in India because I love India and I love the sunshine. You know, my higher power is the sun. That is my higher power. And when I was walking on Hampstead Heath the other day and I thought, right, I'm going to try and meditate. It takes a lot for me to meditate. And I went and sat on a bench and I was listening to the clouds were there. And then the sun came out and it hit my face and I just felt that warmth. I felt my soul lift and I was like, you know, that's what my higher power is for me. It's this warm glow that tells me everything's going to be okay, you know. And throughout my recovery, I've listened to chairs, and I've always put myself down on, on a step 8 thing about, you know, forgiving myself and amends to myself. But I've never really connected with the damage and what happened to me in active addiction and how much, you know, how awful and cruel and vicious that life was. And what happened recently was I was in India and I was doing a yoga teacher training, and I got to about 3 weeks into this course and I had this image that it was going to be this beautiful retreat and relaxing, and I got there and it was like a Krypton Factor endurance test. It was like 5 hours yoga every day, 6 hours lectures, chanting in the evening. I mean, if anybody had sent vinyasa to me one more time by week 3, I would have punched them or headbutted them. It was like so not spiritual. It was like really, really hardcore. And I was lying in this yoga shala at about 38 degrees with my knee had just gone and tears rolling down my face thinking, whatever made you think you could be a yoga teacher, Amanda? Do you know what I mean? But what happened for me, and it was almost like I had to be beaten. I had to be physically, emotionally, everything gone to get in touch with the grief, to get in touch with and connect with me and what happened to my story and how horrific it was and how incredibly grateful I am to be alive. to be alive, to be breathing, to have come out of that life and stuck in this shitty, hot yogashala in India in 38 degrees with a broken knee, with tears rolling down my, tears of joy, tears of like, yes, this is, and I just think that healing for the, Mandy, the working girl Mandy, I got in contact with her, and it's taken me 15 years to do that, to feel what happened to me and connect with that pain. And, and I think it's that thing as well. One more thing that I wanted to share is that my mum is an active alcoholic, and she's, through my addiction, she never let go of me. She would send me these envelopes to the place where I'd pick up my needles every week. And she didn't know if I was alive or dead, but she would send this envelope once a week with £20. I'd pick it up. I'd never phone her. I've moaned a lot in NA about my mum. I've moaned a lot about dealing with her being an active alcoholic. And what happened at Christmas, when I was in India in November, she phoned me and she said she was diagnosed with melanoma. And I lost my sister 4 years ago through cancer, and that was one of those experiences. That was in my step one. I thought if I lost my mum or my sister, I would use. And actually looking after my sister, holding her hand, being there when she took her last breath, it was okay. It was okay. I was able to be that person. This fellowship had given me the tools to be that person for her in her last few weeks, And when my mum got this diagnosis, I've got to say, because of my experience of cancer, I just thought, this is it, it's all over. And she thought that too. I couldn't get her to do the scans. We had 3 appointments. She didn't turn up for any of them. The fear for her. And she said it's like a death sentence. And I was like, I know, and we both projected, and she smokes 40 fags a day. She drinks 2 bottles of wine a day. How could she not have cancer at 75? And that was my thinking. It was like, oh my God, of course she has. And because everybody I know that gets cancer dies. So, and we got her in for this scan, and we got her in for this operation, and I said, I'll take you in, it'll be fine. And I haven't stayed in my mum's house for about 8 years because of her behaviour. And I said, I'll come and stay with you. And she was like, really? And I said, I will come and look after you. And we did this op together, and and she couldn't drink. She was so done in with the experience of this operation because they took half the skin on her leg away. And I was at the point, I thought, she's going to go into withdrawal. I'm going to have to give her a drink. I was like, Mummy, you really need to have a drink now. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought, she's going to go into the DTs. I've got to make her drink. And she was like, no, I don't feel like drinking. I was like, all right, well, have some more codeine, And it was trying to apply her with drugs and codeine. And through this weekend, she was like a little child, she'd have a and I just saw my mum as this really precious, damaged, but this person that means so much to me, I feel like, since that experience with my mum, I feel so grateful my mum's still here, and the time I have left with her is so precious. And she has just been lovely. She's turned into like lovely mum. It's so weird. Because normally when I go on holiday, she'll phone up and she'll be horrible on the phone. She'll just be all victim, martyr. You can't which one? Are you going to do the burning cross or are you going to be victim? But she's been, and I said to her before I went, it'd be so lovely if you just said, have a nice holiday and mean it. And what it's done is it's brought us together, because I stood up and I was there for her. And that was all she needed to know, that I was willing. And my partner and I've just been made redundant. I've done the same job for 11 years. I work with young people with drugs. I love my job. My job's ended. And my partner and I are about to have a year off, a year out, and go traveling and, just be like crazy people, but still with this fellowship going, going to be in India and do stuff like that. And I said to my mum, I said, you know what, no matter what happens, if anything happens, I'll fly home. And she knows I'll do that, And so I love my mum, and I just, that for me has been a really big bit of healing, because it's been so, we do recover. Any area, if you're sitting here and you're new and you don't believe in the magic that we have in these rooms, you need to believe, because, Think of people when they come in, how battered they are, and then within a few months we see them bushy tail, bright eyes, chubby cheeks, happy people, you know, and that is the miracle of recovery. And I just think, you know, it can work for anyone. You know, what I love here is that you can come in and you can rewrite the script to your life. You can reinvent yourself. You can be anything you want to be. So all you've got to do is come here, put pen to paper, do the work, and just, no matter what, don't pick up. Thanks for letting me share.